My name's Deepak. I'm the founder of Pearl Lemon. We're a multi-seven-figure agency. If you're black or you're brown or you're an ethnic minority of any persuasion, you are going to be stereotyped. And if you're in the West and you're selling to a mixed or predominantly white market, there's going to be at some level somewhere stereotypes that are made about you. And we can even expand that out, even if you've got an accent, even if you look a little bit funny. People stereotype all the time. Okay. I live in countryside Italy. It's beautiful. And I'm in the middle of trying to buy our actual first residential home here in Italy outside of property that I've got in the UK. And the estate agent that we're talking to, so this is the most recent example I've had of, let's call it ignorance. He can't get his head around that I wasn't born and raised in India. He keeps asking, the third time he's asked now, so when did you move over from India? He keeps asking about Bollywood. He keeps saying to me that, oh, wow, you're tall for an Indian. All of these things, it keeps coming up, okay? That's the first example. Second example, Upwork, several years ago, I remember getting onto the call with a Scandinavian guy, and he said, oh, I realized that you weren't like a lot of the cheap Indians that send me messages because I saw your price tag at that time, $100 an hour. And I thought, well, you can't be from India if you're asking that price. Third example, and this is the killer part, is me, myself, feeding into that stereotype when I am communicating, and this was a couple years back again, the value of a part of my team who are amazing, based in India as well as Pakistan, and me almost through traces of my voice being a little bit almost apologetic. What is that? And how is it that stereotyping happens at all levels to such an extent that even in some moments, clearly, without realizing it, I was placing negative stereotypes upon myself based upon the color of my skin? Guys, if you are an ethnic minority, if you are ultimately in or have experienced any of those things, and again, it doesn't just relate to color. It relates to any kind. If you're fat, if you're thin, if you look funny, if you've got bad teeth, if anything, people are going to stereotype you, okay? If you're not center, and it works the other way, of course. If you go into a convention that's focused upon the growth of ethnic minorities and you're white, blonde hair, blue-eyed, you're going to be stereotyped as well. Champagne socialism. Let's help the poor man. Black Lives Matter. The reality is, the card hold reality is if you are stereotyped in any way, and to be honest with you, all of us are stereotyped in some way, the only answer is to be better, to be categorically, undeniably better than the next guy that's set up against you. Okay, you can search the annals of YouTube, search Deep Impact, Impact with a K. You'll find my old music videos. I was back in 2008, 2004, trying to enter the music scene as a British Indian. Yes, I was stereotyped, and I probably wasn't even any good at that point. But in any level, as I've journeyed through my career, one thing has stuck with me, that Deepak, if you stand out, whether it's for the wrong or for the right reasons, if you stand out, you will get noticed. And if you get noticed, or if you inversely get ignored, and therefore you need to be noticed, the only answer is to be that much better. So in fact, it's a gift. In fact, if you ultimately rest upon using excuses such as the color of your skin, such as the way that you look, such as your voice because you're meek, such as I'm too young, people think I'm a kid, man up, be better, get better. This is one of the areas that I've had to learn upon my journey, because what will sometimes happen is that you can feed in, or that you can have the ultimately replies and the feebleness of others bleed in to your mindset. It's dangerous, okay? It's dangerous. The only answer, if you're going to be stereotyped, is to be that much better in everything that you do. And to be that much better, you can't just be as good as the other guy. You need to be that much better than the other person that you work with, okay? Or the other person that you're competing against, because that's how you stand out. You can't be just as good. I mean, watch Eminem, 8 Mile. You can't be just as good as the other guys. You have to be that much better than the other guys. And this is a real world thing that's happening all the time, okay? My wife, she's white, strawberry blonde Italian. We walk together in the countryside in Italy. We get looked at. We get stared at. It could be for many right or wrong reasons, but we do get noticed, and you will get noticed as you walk into a room and you're someone who looks, smells, acts, walks, talks different from everybody else. And if you look, act, walk, talk different from everybody else, you want to be in a league of one. You want to be in a category of your own because you are undeniably more calculated, more poised, more pragmatic, more charismatic than any other person in the room. And that relates to the way that you build your proposals. That relates to the way that you fundamentally run your operation. That relates to the way that you communicate, inspire, and lead your team. Because these stereotypes have been drilled into us through the literature that we've watched, the ultimately movies that we watched. Why is it, for example, in The Matrix that Morpheus can never be the one? Why is it the actual Keanu Reeves who has to walk through the door? Why is it in 300 that the fundamentally evil enemy are depicted as being of almost Arabic descent and as being African at some level? Stereotypes exist. They're there in Hollywood. They are there across a lot of the literature that exists today. And guys, this isn't about a comment of life being unfair. I'm saying that you need to use this as your opportunity to man up, to be better, to be that much better than anyone else around you, so that you're so good, as Cal Newport talks about in his book, be so good they can't ignore you. Be so damn good that you will turn heads for not only the reason of your difference, but for the reason of your sheer excellence with which you do anything that you put your mind to. So this is a cry, a war call for anyone who is an ethnic minority. If you're Indian, if you're black, if you're Chinese, if you're, I say Indian, if you're brown, black, yellow, green, purple, be better. Especially if you're selling into a marketplace where the majority of the people don't look, walk, act, talk like you. That means that you're going to be viewed with some modicum, some breadcrumb of difference, okay? Now, at Pearl Lemon, we have a really diverse team, and we probably have more ethnic minorities, rather ethnic minorities in the eyes of our clients than we do our actual front and center clients. So we sell into the West and we hire from, for example, India, Pakistan, South Africa. In South Africa, we have multiple Black South Africans. In India and Pakistan, we've got, of course, Indians and Pakistanis, and we're often working with Americans and Brits. So therefore, the standard and the requirement is that you need to be as good as anyone else in the West in the room, okay? And that's how you get ahead. That's how you do better. And this is the part that sometimes frustrates me when I hear complaints or I hear ultimately challenges that come from anyone who's struggling, and they attribute it towards their difference, or being honest, they're not even aware that that difference means that they've got to be that much better. So you need to, and again, it relates to this whole concept that you need to be 10 to 100x better than the people around you in order to achieve the outcome that you're looking for, okay? And this was something that really held me back at the earlier stages of my career, okay? And this is the really interesting thing to think about, that as you ascend through the ladders of success, through your degrees of growth, when you're in fundamentally a position, or you want to put yourself into a position to lead and bleed for your team, then one of the biggest areas of growth needs to be your ability to communicate your insights. You're not doing any work anymore. you're communicating, you're leading. And one of the biggest challenges I'll have with some of the developing economies that we hire from is you got to communicate. If you want to lead, you've got to communicate your ideas and you've got to lead by example and you've got to inspire those around you. I don't use a Trello tracking tool. I don't use ClickUp. I don't use Monday. I don't use my team and members of my team do. But for me to be the best, for me to be as good as I can be, all of it rests upon my ability to lead and manage teams. So what happens is that in all of those instances where I've been stereotyped by the Scandinavian gentleman, where I'm stereotyped by the real estate agent here in provincial Italy, where I am stereotyped in any way based upon the color of my skin or ultimately my ethnic background, it just means I need to be better. Do you know what? That adds fuel to the fire. Because of course, I'm going to go to, and a buddy of mine said it, Scott, I'm going to do a 100-mile run soon. He says, you never know, you might be the first brown man to complete that event. Okay, I'm doing an ultra and I see it in the ultra running community. There are a couple of Indians floating around, but not many. And it just shows you that difference does make a difference in all spaces. I remember when I was briefly part of the British military, and when I applied to 21 SAS, I was the only brown guy in the damn room. I was the only brown or black guy. Even when I went to submit my initial papers, they said that we've never had anyone actual British Indian apply. The receptionist did, who was doing my intake papers for as long as she'd worked there, and it had been several years in that ultimately intake desk office reception in Camden in London. So there's still so many spaces where your difference is going to be noticed. And as you can appreciate, I've still got my old British Army picture when I completed my initial training, that I was there's one black guy and there was me. And that was the basic training that we went through for reservists. And there was a team, let's say, of maybe 40 people. I've still got the picture back home in London. And there was just us two. So of course we're going to stand out. Of course we're going to look different. Of course that means you're going to be more noticed, more scrutinized. And that means that there's more opportunity to rise or to fall. So you should rise to the occasion. And I think that if you just go in with that mindset that, of course, I've got to be better. And the irony is that doesn't really change, because why wouldn't anyone of any background, irrespective of their advantages or disadvantages, think that when you go into the room? So I get super frustrated when people make reference, and it's why I want to talk about these references, these stereotypes here now and today, because I get super frustrated when anyone uses the color of their skin, their ethnic background, their accent, the tone of their voice as excuses. Be better, be much, much better than all of the other people that enter the room, and use also, and here's the kicker, once you ultimately are able to overcome that, use some of these stereotypes to your advantage. Okay, so simple example, Indians have a reputation, unfortunately, in, for example, the digital marketing, in the digital marketing industry, as sending cold spammy emails that could say the words "Dear Sir." Okay, it happens all the time. If you're a business owner or if you work in any kind of marketing department, you'll have received emails or LinkedIn messages to that extent, okay? And because there's such a low barrier to entry when it comes to calling yourself an SEO, calling yourself a link building expert, you'll get so many Indians who want to do that remotely, get into the arbitrage game, and therefore send out these crappy emails using automation tools such as GMass, Lemlist, Woodpecker, or whatever the tools might be, okay? There's many, many of them. And consequently, Indians get a name in the marketplace for being cheap and outsourced. And that's where the actual part of that stereotype comes from. And it's not totally unfounded, okay? However, another amazing Indian stereotype that can work to your advantage as an example, and think about how this applies to you, is what are some positive stereotypes about Indians? What about an Indian accountant? he's probably going to be competent potentially. What about the fact that at the time of recording, Rishi Sunak is the British Prime Minister? What about the fact that there's that movie with Dev Patel, Monkey Man, and he's kind of doing a bit of a John Wick piece? There's also lots of positive stereotypes that you can bring to the table, okay? So you can use also your ethnicity to your advantage, okay? What about the fact that I'm entering ultras, and maybe in India, I can make a joke and say, us Indians, back in the day, we were used to running all day on the farm, going to the next village for water. What about the fact that Indians work damn hard? And that's probably quite a common stereotype. So if you get Deepak Shukla and if you get my team coming to the room, of course we're going to work hard. We're going to outwork everybody and we're going to be better than everybody, because that's what everybody might assume when it comes to the stereotype that's a positive one about Indians. And you'd be like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So if I can lean into the positive stereotypes, if I can blow up the negative ones, then all of a sudden you can now not only understand that you are at a place, some people call it a disadvantage based upon how people stereotype you, you can actually use it to your advantage to become better, to be better, to be the only guy in the room that has a unique set of advantages that means that you are set up to annihilate and kick ass when it comes to serving up your abilities versus the competition. And this is the only way to operate. This is the only way to be, okay? When I went and studied English literature at Warwick, I was one of probably less than 5 people who were an ethnic minority. And I was also a male ethnic minority, male man of color that was an ethnic minority. So there were, I think, 2 of us in the entire class. And then also I wanted to go and, for example, I went to work at Deloitte. So there's all kinds of stereotypes that are feeding into that, okay? I was also from a working class background. The school that I went to, it closed down when I was 14. What did all of that mean? It meant that I had to be better, that I had to be really damn good with how I communicated my ideas and my insights to make sure I could compete with everyone else. And that's fine. I love it. You should love it. You should love all of the circumstances you're born into, because it only adds fuel to the damn fire to go out there and to kick ass and take names when it comes to being better.